What's going on, everyone? I'm just a typical average American here today to react and learn about insane things that Charles III demands of his servants. Charles. I mean, he hasn't been king, crowned king, all that long. And is he really already being that outrageous? I'm not sure if this title is a bit of an exaggeration to get people to click on it, because it definitely worked, by the way, for me, because I really want to see these. But this happens to be one of those topics that Americans in general, when they're kind of trying to scoff at the idea of royalty, particularly British royalty, and the idea of monarchs still being around. Americans point to stuff like this a lot where they're like, oh gosh, they're being outrageous. They have all this money and servants and they're asking for crazy stuff and that. You know, not that long ago, there was a whole drama about Charles, like the first or second day of being king, asking his assistant for a pen or something. He didn't like his pen, or it was out of ink, and he was beckoning for a new pen. And the American media just jumped on that and was obsessed with, like, look at Charles demanding a pen for from his servant. And I was like, isn't this, I mean, maybe he didn't ask in the nicest possible way possible, but all of this is pretty, like, he's the king, for crying out loud. This is pretty normal stuff for him to have assistants and have people who aid him and help him carry out duties. So I know a lot of this, maybe on this list, is more normal stuff that's not, it's kind of outside his control if there's a royal shoe scrubber on the staff. But I also think at the same time, maybe there's some funny, insane things Charles is demanding of his servants to do. I don't know for sure. I'm just trying to look at both sides of this. Anyway, I'm very interested to find out, so let's take a look.
It's good to be the king. King Charles III has been waiting a very long time to take the throne. At 73 years old, he was the oldest heir in waiting in British history. But as Britain mourns their beloved queen, Charles is ready to step up and take on the role he's been training for his whole life. And that'll mean some changes in Buckingham Palace. Serving the royal family always means...
Right. I know there's like an entire staff. A lot of people, some who even live at Buckingham Palace, I think, or can. And there's a bunch of crazy stuff there, like a bowling alley and a cafeteria. But anyway, it's kind of like when a new president comes in to the United States. The entire staff, the whole place has to kind of get used to how this new person runs everything, in a sense. So I'm sure Buckingham Palace and all of the royalty and the staff is all getting used to his way of doing stuff as well.
In some peculiarities, the entire institution is full of arcane rules about etiquette, and every staff member is required to know the ins and outs of catering to each member of the family. After all, it wouldn't do to have a royal make their own bed or pull out their own chair. And these are just a few of the rules those serving Buckingham Palace have to follow.
Yeah, it's stuff like that where I think it's royal protocol at this point, I guess. I guess if Charles fought hard enough and made a big enough deal out of it, they'd let him make his own bed. But at the same time, it's probably a long tradition that there's people who make his bed and get his meals ready and drive him everywhere. But I'm curious how outrageous this gets.
It's a huge mansion, and that means a lot of cleaning. But if the servants were hoping to use modern conveniences to make it easier, don't count on it. The royals want to wake up to a clean castle, but they also want to get their sleep. That's why vacuuming is prohibited in the palace until 10 a.m., so the servants usually wind up sweeping the carpets clean instead. And they can't...
I don't know what I think of that. That's okay. You know what? I'm okay with that. I'm really analyzing these. I'm trying to be fair here, as fair as I can be. I think it's reasonable to not blare your vacuum cleaner. I mean, you wouldn't want anyone in your own household vacuuming at like 2 a.m. So, okay, This is fine.
Can't even use those carpets. The only people allowed to use the center of the carpets to traverse the palace are the royals themselves, so the staff walks at the open space at the side. You wouldn't want the staff leaving footprints on the carpet when the king or queen might want to use them later. And that's to say nothing of mealtime.
Okay, that's silly. That's actually silly. And sounds very traditional. Oh, I'm trying not to be one of those Americans that just scoffs at everything. But my scoff is getting ready. I may scoff at any moment.
The royals can be picky, and each member has their own preference, so the servants of the palace frequently use maps to make up each plate. Prince Philip, the late queen's husband, reportedly liked his oatcakes directly next to his honey for easy dunking, so each mealtime is likely like plotting a military deployment for the staff. And one item doesn't show up too often, but it will soon. When the new king takes office, there's one traditional item that he's supposed to eat for good luck. It's a fish dish, but it's not good old fish and chips. Rather, King Charles III will be chowing.
What is fish and chips? Chips in the UK are not chips in America, are they? Chips are fries, or fries are chips. Chips are not chips. They're made of potato and they're French fries in the UK. That's what a chip is. Fish and chips. I've heard of that. Anyway.
Down on lamprey pies, made from a primordial-looking invasive fish with a mouthful of teeth. The fish has actually been eradicated from UK waters, so it'll be imported from the United States. That's a whole lot of fuss for a pie that looks like it could bite you back. And everyone needs to be ready to move at a second's notice. When Queen Elizabeth stood, everyone in her presence stood as a sign of respect. That's likely to continue with King Charles III in charge, but not everything will. The new king has a reputation as a fussy, particular man, and that means the castle staff will likely be memorizing a whole new set of rules now that he's in charge.
Uh-oh. Maybe Charles is fussy. Is this true? Does the public have an opinion on this? Is this just common knowledge that King Charles is a little bit of a fusshead compared to Elizabeth, who everyone, as far as I can tell, absolutely adored. Although even during Queen Elizabeth's reign, they probably weren't allowed to walk on the carpet, and they had to stand when she stood. So some of it is just royal protocol and out of their control. But if Charles is getting fussy on us, okay, I gotta see how fussy.
But they've had time in training. Charles has been a royal for his entire life, and that means the staff has had time to acquaint themselves with his quirks. This includes a dislike for doing anything in particular. When he takes a bath, he wants his bath towel pre-folded for him to wrap it around his body. When he gets up in the morning, he wants his clothes in a perfectly aligned order, including the left and right socks to be directly in front of him. He doesn't even put toothpaste on the brush himself. The staff carefully squeezes it out, and he wants exactly an inch worth of toothpaste. There was a reason he was nicknamed the Pampered Prince.
Okay. Oh boy. We might have crossed a threshold right there. Asking for your toothpaste to be pre-squeezed on your brush. A whole inch? You're supposed to do like pea-sized, by the way. An inch is too much, I think. What do I know? I'm not a king, but I think that's just like, don't you want to feel like a human being still? Would be my question. Do you really want all this stuff taken cared for you? Some of it is convenience. Sure, you're a bit busy, you got stuff to do. But at a certain point, if people are pasting your toothbrush, if that's a word, you start to lose touch, I feel, with just being a normal human, you know?
Other curious demands include having his shoelaces ironed every morning because it wouldn't do to look even the slightest bit rumpled, and when he takes a bath, he wants the bath to be tepid, and he likes his comfort even when he's traveling. Charles reportedly took his own toilet seat and a brand of velvet toilet paper with him whenever he was visiting another city or a country, because you never know what's lurking in the bathroom.
What? What is velvet toilet paper? Is this a joke? Isn't velvet a really expensive fabric? We're not talking about silk. We're talking about velvet. I don't know much about this stuff, but that sounds absurd. I just can't tell how absurd. Bringing your own special toilet seat. which if he did, I'm sure he made some poor assistant bring his special toilet seat that's probably pre-shaped to his rump in particular if he's taking it this far. This seems kind of made up. This is like, this is getting a little insane, as the title said.
When he's traveling, Charles reportedly took his own toilet seat and a brand of velvet toilet paper with him whenever he was visiting another city or a country, because you never know what's lurking in the bathroom. Actually, given the scary one-ply toilet paper in so many high school bathrooms, that one might be sort of reasonable. And it's not the only thing.
What? What? Now that we get the narrator is defending him. I thought that was maybe the silliest one I've heard besides the toothpaste.
Thing he takes with him, because Charles does not trust what you're serving for breakfast. He may be a rather fussy man, and likely to get even more so now that he's the king, but Charles has humble tastes in some ways. He likes a simple breakfast, including special breakfast cereals and dried fruit. But he does like...
Special breakfast cereals. What if it's like the king literally is eating Captain Crunch or Cheerios or something? No, it has to be something silly. It has to be Cocoa Puffs or Count Chocula. Like a children's cereal. That would be so great. I'd respect that, you know? Tastes good.
He likes a simple breakfast, including special breakfast cereals and dried fruit. But he does like one particular indulgence. He has a selection of 6 kinds of honey that he uses with his breakfast cereal, and he takes it with him in a breakfast box wherever he visits. No full English fry-up for this man. In general, his diet includes quite a few peculiarities. Before his usual breakfast of cereal, dried fruit, and honey...
I'm sorry. 6 different types of honey? I was really fighting for this. I thought this video, this is gonna be an exaggeration, you know, blowing things out of proportion. It's so easy to target the rich royalty celebrities and their pampered lifestyle, but the man has he carries 6 different types of honey around, for crying out loud. It is a little silly. It is a little over the top. Even I have to say.
He eats a single plum, but the way it's served is a strange curiosity. He wants 2 plums to be served to him every morning, and then he examines them and eats only one of them. The plums come from his personal garden, and no one knows why he chooses to eat only one, but the other isn't wasted. It goes back in a plum jar, and it might be served him another day as an option. But no one knows how many days a plum is kept in the rotation until he gets it thrown out. But at breakfast...
What? There's like a whole mythology. A whole mythos to the plums here. Okay, maybe there could be a TV show just about Charles Plums, his Forgotten Plums. It's like a band name, actually. A good band name, Forgotten Plums.
That's one of his few indulgences. Maybe Charles is a believer that you need to start the day by flushing out your system, but his breakfast is fairly Spartan, with an emphasis on whole grain cereals. His breakfasts typically include a lot of flaxseed and wheat germ, to the point that his son, Prince William, jokingly called his father's breakfast spread the bird table. But the rest of the day is very different. Charles pays attention to what he eats, and that includes his staff bringing in organic produce and locally foraged mushrooms, which is probably a very different duty than those serving the new king were probably expecting. His large estate contains woods filled with mushrooms, and he's even been seen rooting around in the woods himself with a wicker basket. But
I've never been into the wild foraging thing. I've seen people do it. So I'm not used to that. That's not what I'm all about. So that is a bit strange to me, getting fresh foraged mushrooms. You know, at least he's a man of the land, eating off the land. It could be worse.
But now that he's taking up residence in the royal palace, odds are this task will fall to his staff. That doesn't mean he doesn't have his treats. Charles likes some surprisingly humble foods. Once in a while, he's fond of cheesy baked eggs and biscuits with cheese, but only once in a while, so the staff is likely a bit relieved to be able to make some good old-fashioned British comfort food. And when it comes to eating eggs, he reportedly wants them boiled for exactly 4 minutes before being served. And the staff might actually get a surprising break when it comes to...
He has a lot of... I have to admit, Charles does seem to have, if the reports are accurate, a lot of really, really particular requests with the timing of how long stuff is cooked and how bringing 2 plums so he can choose the best one and the fresh food. And it's not like absurd stuff that we're talking about here. it is definitely coming across as like rich, privileged, pampered lifestyle, though. So, yeah, I don't know.
Charles's orders. Charles surprisingly skips lunch most days, or at least he did as prince. He follows a particular routine for a small breakfast, followed by working through lunch and not eating, followed by a full-on royal feast for dinner that fuels him for the rest of the day. Charles is a practical man, and he reportedly views lunch as a luxury that gets in the way of the important work. And Charles has some strongly felt convictions that affect his diet. While Queen Elizabeth II was doggedly apolitical, feeling it improper to weigh in on current issues, Charles was never so shy. Particularly, he's very active on the issue of climate change and doesn't seem inclined to stop now that he's king. This affects his diet as well, as he's chosen to eat only meat or fish 5 days a week and dairy and eggs only 6 days.
I'm not exactly sure. I mean, from what I know, the monarch is supposed to be apolitical, but that's like a protocol. That's what they want the king or queen to do. I guess it's not illegal or strictly forbidden for the monarch to express political opinion. And it sounds like Charles is mostly talking about the issue of climate change, which at least, is good. A lot of people can agree on that. There's no harm being done by expressing that opinion. So that's good. And it's actually a good cause for him to care about, of all the political stuff that he could care about. So I have always wondered about that, though.
These daily breaks from the more indulgent food raise attention for the meat and dairy industry's impact on the climate, and no doubt leave the staff scrambling a bit to figure out a suitable vegetarian meal for the monarch's dinner. He's also rather particular about what meat is used, making sure it's raised sustainably and grass-fed. But there's one thing he will never eat. The royals like the finest things in life, with the Queen's banquets frequently being ornate affairs. Of course, the ridiculous banquets of history are a thing of the past. No one's gonna be served ortolans, the now endangered tiny bird soaked in liquor before...
Okay, I was like, what is an ortolan? I don't even want to Google that. That sounds kind of disgusting, if it's a tiny bird soaked in liquor. What? I just digested what the narrator said. What? That's disgusting.
No one's gonna be served ortolans, the now endangered tiny bird soaked in liquor before being eaten whole. But one additional delicacy may be making its way off the menu under King Charles III. At his estate as prince, he would never allow foie gras to be served. The fattened duck liver is known for its rich taste, but the force-feeding method used to create it has been called severely cruel to the animal.
Wow, Charles is really an animal rights activist of sorts, isn't he? That's nice. I am very limited on what I know about Charles as a person. I never saw him growing up. Like, someone living in the UK would have literally been growing up as he was growing up and probably gotten a good taste of his personality and what he's all about. I don't have any of that, so I'm really going off an internet video for a lot of my analysis, but it sounds like a nice guy. If not just for the animal and climate stuff. Seems nice.
It's already been banned from the royal kitchen for 14 years, perhaps due to Charles's urging, and it's certainly not going to be brought back under his rule. A few rulers will be making their way out the royal door with the new king, though. Charles is a senior citizen, and his two sons are grown men with wives and children of their own. It's been a long time since children roamed the halls of Buckingham Palace. After all, William and Kate have their own place, and Harry is an ocean away. So the highly trained nannies of Buckingham Palace won't be a concern for Charles. And the same goes for the...
Oh, that's kind of sad. Huh. I mean, people are literally out of a job sometimes when a new monarch comes. And there's no children around. The royal nannies. He's going to talk about the royal dog watchers? Oh no, the corgis, right? Queen Elizabeth's corgis. What's happening to them, by the way? And the dog, the keepers of the corgis. Oh boy.
The Queen's beloved corgis. Charles was never the closest to his mother's dogs, so they'll be leaving the royal palace and going to live with the Duchess of York. And so the corgis' own royal butlers will no longer be a part of King Charles's life. So some things will change, but others are likely to stay the same. Charles is a
Okay.
new king, and the Queen had 70 years to settle into a routine. In some ways, Charles will follow his mother's traditional approach, but in others, he's likely to be a more modern king. He grew up in an era when the royal family's prestige wasn't quite what it used to be, especially outside of the Queen herself. He's never sought the public spotlight or been as comfortable as the face of a nation as his mother was, so he's likely to concern himself with domestic affairs, and not as likely to bring the whole royal entourage around the world.
Okay. Right, that has kind of historically been something that royalty does on a fairly regular basis, representing the country, traveling a lot, seeing people, hosting events. Um, I did see Charles make his address to the nation after the passing of Queen Elizabeth. That is one experience I had listening to him speak. It was a nice speech. It was a good speech. He was well spoken. Uh, I liked his delivery. So, yeah, from what I've seen, I like Charles, even if he does not put toothpaste on his own toothbrush. I might be able to look past that. I don't know.
But the times, they are a changin'. Charles is the oldest king to ever take office, and much like in his case, there is a clear line of succession. Prince William inherited his father's title of Prince of Wales, and like him, he'll eventually take over as king, in a whole lot less than the 73 years Charles waited. And when that happens, whether it's because Charles abdicates or passes on, there may be some big changes in store for the royal staff, because Prince William and his wife Kate don't use domestic staff at their home. The oldest son of King Charles III has always been a more modern royal, and he and his wife largely eschew the traditional royal upbringing for their three kids, while
Oh, that's real interesting. Yeah, it is sad to consider, sad to have to talk about, but right, King Charles is only going to be king for however longer that he lives, and he is pretty old already. So, the changing of the UK's monarch, a new king is going to come uh, in the not too distant future. So this is all going to get flipped up on its head again. This is interesting about how they choose to live and raise their kids in a not so conventional royal lifestyle. I like that. Very, very personable, very human. Very interesting too. I didn't know that.
it's likely all of the kids will grow up by the time William takes the throne. This also means that he could very well decide that the royal staff could use a trimming down, and that would be a far bigger earthquake in Buckingham Palace. Want to know some more about the royal
Huh.
family? Watch Insane Ways the Queen of England.
Huh. Very interesting. Very interesting. That was by the Infographics Show. Very good. I like that. I give it a like. This was pretty fascinating. And I didn't know if it was going to actually be that insane. The title was Insane Things Charles III Demands of His Servants. Some of the stuff was, oh well, this is stuff that they do to pamper royalty. No matter what, it's just something that has always been done. And some of it was a little insane. I'll hand it to the video. I'll give it to it. You know, some of these facts were a little surprising about sort of the nitpicky, very detail-oriented requests, dare I say, demands of King Charles that he makes on his staff, particularly around eating and getting up in the morning. Very interesting. It wasn't so insane that it was like mistreating the staff. It wasn't abusing the staff or anything. It's just kind of what an American might expect royal people to do and ask for them. It was kind of right in line with that. So interesting nonetheless, definitely. Anyway, if you found this video interesting as well, feel free to give it a like or leave a comment. And if you're interested in more videos like this, me reacting to the UK, Great Britain, culture in the UK, stuff there, things that I've never learned about or experienced before, feel free to subscribe for more. And until then, thanks for watching, and see you next time.